Hi everyone, welcome to my channel if you're new here, welcome back if you're a returning viewer or subscriber. Today's video is going to be my wrap up for September, talking you through all the books that I read throughout the month. I have 3 books to mention here, as well as one book that I actually failed to mention in my August wrap up. I didn't mention it because it's a DNF, so it just like passed my mind. I didn't really get very far into it before I decided it wasn't for me. But yeah, so I don't know, I feel like September was quite like a mid month in terms of my reading. It was a very difficult month personally for me. I've touched on that a little bit, but because of personal circumstances it meant that it went much quicker than most months do. It felt like it was like a week and a half long, but simultaneously it was just like so long because of what I was dealing with personally. So basically September was a weird month, and I'm kind of like proud of myself for how much I did manage to get to. Your reading is very much entwined with how you're doing personally, and I think, you know, like it's all wrapped up. I'm gonna give myself some grace. Having said that though, I didn't have any bad ratings. Everything was just kind of like middling or good, but not great, you know, like no 5 stars, no 4.5, things like that. Still books that I recommend, and books that I feel like you could really enjoy, maybe even more so than me. So the first book I have to mention is Summer Crossing by Truman Capote. Like I said, this was a book that I DNF'd in August. I don't know how much I got through this. I think like about 40 pages or something like that. It's only a very, very short little book. It's 126 pages. So usually I would, you know, persevere a bit longer than 40, but because of how short the book was, I'd made like quite a significant progress in the story, but still wasn't really meshing with anything. I'm gonna read the back of this book because the plot is a little bit like ambiguous. You know, there's not a lot going on in this. Flame-haired Grady McNeil is beautiful, rich and defiant. Her privileged society life leaves her wanting more than her conventional parents have in mind for her, and excitement comes in the form of the highly unsuitable Clyde, a Brooklyn-born Jewish parking attendant. When Grady's mother and father leave her alone one summer in their New York penthouse, her secret affair intensifies, and she is forced to make decisions that will alter her future indelibly. Anticipating capote go lightly with its free-spirited heroine, Truman Capote's recently discovered debut novel is also a captivating portrayal of first love. So yeah, that's the basic story. We're following this kind of like socialite or very wealthy girl. She's from like a very wealthy family, and it's about her staying in New York over the summer and falling in love with the parking attendant. I didn't really get far enough into this book to fully grasp the whole plot, but I feel like because I did get a significant way through, maybe there wasn't much of one really at all. The cover of this is 10 out of 10, and I love Truman Capote's work. I've read 2 of his short stories and 1 of his books. I've got on with it very, very well. But I just felt like I was so bored, and I don't know whether that's because there wasn't much plot or whether like the writing didn't really intrigue me. This is his debut, like I said. But another thing on top of that is it's also a book that he never intended to publish. This was, you know, maybe not even like a final draft. I don't know, I always find that a little bit icky when it's a piece of work that an author never intended for people to see. For people to find this like after his death and to publish it and then rate it poorly, it's not like a fair rating because it's based on a piece of work that wasn't even complete. It was never ever going to be his best work. I was never going to enjoy it as much as I enjoyed Breakfast at Tiffany's or even his short stories. I don't think this was like a good representation of Truman Capote, and I would definitely urge people, if they somehow start with this book, to like definitely read other work from him, because I feel like this book is just not a good look into like who he is and how he writes. I still think it's like a really, you know, it's well written considering it's a debut, but I think that it's not the essence of him. I truly felt like I was wasting my time with this. I would sit down, I would get zero enjoyment out of it, and I was just like, I could knuckle down and dedicate an afternoon to finishing this book, but at the same time, like, you know, that's an afternoon of my life wasted. Not saying that I'm going to be doing something profound with that time. I just didn't think it was like worth the effort to slog through just to be coming out the end. Definitely not loving it, but also just being like, I don't really care. Plus, I feel uncomfortable with the fact that this was never a book that we were meant to see. I don't know whether I'd recommend it. I feel like probably not. Maybe a nice one if you're in New York over the summertime, but yeah. Other than that, I would probably recommend other work of his over this, for sure, actually. Okay, so in terms of September reads, the first book I got to was, actually, all of these were on my, all of them other than one was on my September TBR, which is good. But this is Wonder Woman Warbringer by Leigh Bardugo. Actually, the books that I read throughout September were all YA books, and I wonder if that's the reason why I liked them but I didn't love them. As I got older and older, YA is having to kind of like convince me more of its worth. It's obviously, without a doubt, like worth reading for people who are younger, but nowadays I just feel like the books I really connect with are adult reads, so it has to be a fantastic YA for me to like pay attention to it. But having said that, these were some good YA books, some really strong ones actually. So this is one of 4 books in this series called the DC Icons series, which is by Penguin, and they basically commissioned a bunch of authors to write about DC icons. So we've got Wonder Woman, Batman, Catwoman and Superman. I've read the Batman one and I give it 3.5, but realistically it's like 2.753. I read this one in September, and then I also own Catwoman, and I don't know whether I'm interested in Superman, I'm not sure, but I've been kind of like slowly making my way through this series. This one is my favourite. So much more over Batman. It's so much stronger, so much better written, and I don't know, Leigh Bardugo I already have a great relationship with. Although having said that, Sticks of Crow's Geology, two of my favourite books of all time. The Grisha trilogy was great, and then it really went downhill, and then I read Ninth House, and that was like a solid 3-star, so nothing like impressive, but an interesting book all the same. So this actually ranks quite highly in terms of my Leigh Bardugo reads. So we follow Diana. Diana is Wonder Woman. She is an Amazon princess. Her people are these like 6 foot tall women, you know, very, very powerful and kind of like otherworldly figures. They're not human. Everything about their lives and like the structure of the society and their culture is extremely different from human life, and they also exist apart from people. They live in this like isolated island, and it's very much about like the sisterhood and to support the community, and also being very like battle ready. It's a big day in Diana's life. She's doing a run, which actually is like the first step, I think, in competing to basically be like fully initiated within the Amazon society. And while she's doing the run, she gets sidetracked because she sees this girl, this mortal girl, drowning in the sea by the island. Diana, I guess it's like her humanity like prevails. It means that she ends up saving this girl. However, that goes against everything that the Amazons want for their people. Actually, it turns out that the girl who Diana saved, she's called Alia, is a kind of catalyst, which is to do with like world wars basically. And this long line of humans who ran alongside the Amazons, who I think descended from the Greek gods. Because Diana breaks the law, she can't face her people, so she decides to kind of exile herself and to basically deliver Alia back home. Across the course of the novel, she discovers so much more about Alia that actually is kind of to do with her own life, that maybe what she did had much more consequences than she even first thought. There's a really strong friendship circle in this. We're following Alia and her brother, and then her brother's best friend, and Alia's best friend, and then Diana also joins this group. Diana's so alien to the human world. She doesn't understand how anything works, and she's also just got this like superhuman strength and like all these abilities that don't align with human abilities. So she definitely stands out in New York society, which is where she ends up. I feel like we could have done without the romance. There's like a couple of romance subplots. The one that Diana experiences is kind of interesting because I really like how that ends, which is kind of like a morbid thing to say without spoiling anything. I just feel like it's really good for her arc. I read this mostly through audiobook. It was a fantastic audiobook. It was the Spotify one, and the narrator was fantastic. Truly one of my favourite audiobooks ever, actually. I think I'm going to start making a list of my favourite audiobooks so I can do a full video recommending them, because the narrator is so important in an audiobook in terms of whether you're going to enjoy the book or not. On top of that, it just had fantastic writing. The character development was great, and the character relationships and the dialogue. The dialogue particularly was really, really impressive, and that's just Leigh Bardugo, you know, being a master of her craft. I thought Diana was a great character. I loved her so much. She's so unique, not just because of her like Amazon ways, but like she's so like emotionally mature and so self-assured in a way that's so refreshing. It's not like this uber confidence that's exuding from her, probably because she's a little bit detached from the world. She's like, why would I not, you know, support myself and think I'm pretty cool? Like why would that not be a thing? That level of like low self-esteem is not built into her the way that it's built into people through what they experience, because her people have this like strong spirit that they kind of instill in each of their people. She was very, very level-headed, very, very individualistic, and also so incredibly supportive of particularly Alia, but like every single person in the group. She was just like a friend, like a ride or die friend. This book has quite a strong feminist narrative, but it's explored in a way that's really, really interesting. The Wonder Woman franchise is like hugely feminist, you know, because it's like this female icon. But the book doesn't make it seem like it's like this preachy thing. It's just like, yeah, Diana's strong and she's independent, all these like cliche words. It's not like a massive part of her personality or whatever. It's just like who she is. It's not like a narrative that's being pushed. It's like this is the way it is. She encourages the other girls in the story to be that way too, but more so through their like individual merits and not through go girl power, like that kind of thing. There's a creature that turns up at the end of this book, which is truly disgusting. And again, it's to do with the mythology. I hated that. And I also didn't really like the ending. I thought that whole final fight sequence could have been reduced down. I just feel like it got a little bit messy. It wasn't as like tightly wound, like the plot and the entire story actually. So I was kind of thinking at 4, I don't rate in 0.25, but this is the book that I feel like is kind of the closest to me being like, this has to be like a 3.75. So it's 3.5 on Goodreads, but like realistically, like very much in between those two ratings. I'm not sure whether I will keep it. If you didn't know this already, I haul books that I gave lower than 4 stars, but because this was a 3.75, like it's on the brink. So I think I'm going to hang on to it for a little bit longer, and then I'll see maybe later down the line if I'm running out of shelf space or something like that, if I want to keep it, because I do have half a thought to reread this and annotate it at some point along the way. But like I said, the audiobook was fantastic, so I could just go down that route if I wanted to revisit it. Also so thankful to the TBR jar for picking that out for me, because I don't think I otherwise would have got to it anytime soon at all. Next book that I finished in September was Queen of Shadows by Sarah J Maas. Fourth book in the Throne of Glass series. Slowly making my way through these with Lucy from Library of Lucy. We're having such a fun time with this series. I think it's great, and it was also such a good distraction from like what I was dealing with. This is a huge book, it's enormous, and I definitely spent like the majority of the month kind of making my way through it. We had a reading plan of 60 pages per day or something like that. I think I stuck to for the most part. I fell off at points, and I definitely finished it later than Lucy, because Lucy decided to kind of power ahead when she got towards the end because of how much she was enjoying it. I just physically can't read a lot of pages per day, but I still really enjoyed the series. Not quite as much as she did, but is this series? No. I still really enjoyed the book, not quite as much as she did, but I still came up with a 4-star rating for Queen of Shadows. So in Queen of Shadows, to avoid spoilers, I'm going to keep this very brief and not touch on a lot. Selena returns to Rifthold. Was that what it was called? That's definitely a name of the place in here, but I don't even know. But basically, she returns to the Glass Castle, where the first two books, Throne of Glass and Crown of Midnight, are set. Heir of Fire, we move to a different land, and then we come back to the original setting in Queen of Shadows. And she's returning because she's, you know, been through stuff throughout Heir of Fire, which has altered her a little bit, but also because she's going back to save people who she's very close with, who are in a pretty sticky situation given the end of Heir of Fire. Heir of Fire's ending is so dramatic. That's such a good book, but it leaves a lot of our favourite characters in a very bad place, and Selena kind of returns to attempt to save them and free them. This book is quite heavy on the relationship with Rowan. Started that was kind of established throughout Heir of Fire. More so than that, it's very focused on found family, which is one of my favourite things in books in general, but also particularly in Sarah J Maas's. I love the found family, particularly in ACOTAR, and I feel like that was really strong in Queen of Shadows 2. Not quite as strong as the ACOTAR series, but I really did love seeing like our characters all finally together again, because it has taken a little bit to get here. My lack of enjoyment of this book compared to the previous series, you know, 4 stars obviously a fantastic rating, but the rest of the series was 2 4.5s and a 5-star, so this felt a little bit flat, and I think it definitely could have been a me problem. Obviously, like I said, I was going through some things in September, so I probably wasn't in the best kind of mentality to be consuming this story or reading about some of the themes that were discussed in this. But I definitely didn't enjoy the writing as much in that, and then that in turn kind of makes me think maybe this wasn't fully a me problem. This was like something that I think I would have felt had I been in like the highest of spirits. I feel like the writing drops off a little bit in this book. I was not very impressed by it. There were a couple of scenes or lines that I just feel like I was like, oh, I don't know, it's a bit cringe or just poorly written. It felt kind of more YA than perhaps the previous book or books have done. I liked the story, but I honestly found it a little bit unforgettable. I feel like there wasn't actually a lot that happened in this book. We're following multiple POVs, I forgot to say that actually. So we're following Selena's, and then we're also following other POVs of people who I won't get into. I think I enjoyed the storyline actually of some of the other POVs more so than Selena's, which I feel like is kind of unusual because like the story's about her. That's where like the majority of the plot is happening. It was very much the same old. That happening across, you know, how long is this book? 650 pages is a little bit repetitive and just like not entirely attention grabbing. I did, however, really enjoy the return to Selena's assassin skills. We see a lot of that throughout Throne of Glass and Crown of Midnight, but then we kind of dip away from it a little bit in Heir of Fire because it's kind of like a training book, and we do return to her like sneaky cutthroat ways. I really enjoyed that because she's very much like a planner and like a trickster, and she pulls off some things that it's just crazy to see. It's really fun seeing her be like that, and even though she's surrounded by this group of people supporting her, she's kind of unable to step away from them to do these crazy heists and things like that because that's just like so in her nature as an assassin. And my last point I'm going to say on this book is that Dorian's chapters are really repetitive. It makes sense why this happens. I understand why we get a little POV of him, but like having that show up every so often, it being the same thing over and over and over and over, I felt was unneeded, and I feel like we could have cut the book down a little bit. I just feel like that's the thing, like this book was slightly too long for how much plot actually happened. That's my major complaint, but like I said, 4 stars, like still a really good book, and recommend this series obviously, and I feel like I'm going to have better luck with the later books in it. And then the final book that I finished in the month of September was Truly Devious by Maureen Johnson. This is another book that was on my September TBR. I was really excited to get to it because this is a book that has been on my physical TBR on my shelves since 2021, I believe. I've got like a big spreadsheet of all the books that I own physically, and this one was marked red because I was like, you need to hurry up, girl, like this is taking way too long. So again, really thankful that TBR picked it out for me, because I otherwise don't know when I would have got to this. It would have been on my TBR anyways for this season, but it's also been on my TBR for this season for the past like 2-3 years. Just glad to have finally got to it. Truly Devious is a YA dark academia mystery book. It's very, very along the lines of like the Good Girl's Guide to Murder series, Inheritance Game trilogy, like things like that. A really well-loved YA mystery series. So in this book, there is this exclusive school. The school only takes 50 kids per year. To apply to this school, you have to contact them with the reason why, basically like not a personal statement, like a cover letter saying like, this is why I think I could be good at this school. Completely free tuition, they completely support you in whatever you want to do, but you have to have a special interest or like a little bit of a niche ability, like a niche skill in order to get onto the course. So we're following Stevie Bell, and her special skill or her special interest is that she is really fascinated with crime. She listens to true crime podcasts all the time, reads old case files, as well as just like wanting to be a detective one day. Her particular interest is on this case which actually took place at the school in the 1920s or 30s, I can't remember, like around there. But in Stevie's class there's also a boy who wrote a fantasy book at the age of 7 or something like that, and then like a girl who took apart a radio and put it back together but when she was 3 or something like that. You know, just like these kids who are very, very good but at one particular thing. So Stevie enters this school. In the past timeline, there was a kidnapping case. Founder of the school's wife and daughter, they both went missing and kind of like held for ransom, but then they never showed. I think maybe the wife did. She was murdered, but the little girl never showed, and her father kind of like held out hope that she would turn up at one point. So it's got a past and a present timeline. The past timeline, we're slowly uncovering what that was about, just like the history of it, not actually like the answers to it. And the present timeline, it's Stevie entering the school, going to her classes, exploring the campus, making friends, everything like that. But also, while she's there, another murder takes place, which may or may not be linked with the past case in the 20th century. This book was really, really well written. It's not a debut, but you could tell that this author had like kind of like honed her craft quite a bit, and I felt it kind of like always entertaining. It's hard to describe, just like sentences that I was just like, okay, she knows what she's talking about, she knows what she's doing with this. It felt really, really complete and fleshed out. On top of that, I really love the characters. They're very unique. I agree with some people that some of their skills and their interests are like a little bit random. Like I feel like we could have had some really interesting things happening, but I feel like their actual personalities were really special. I thoroughly enjoyed like kind of exploring the different characters. I love the setting. I love the relationships between the people. I thought that was a really like vivid for me, which I enjoy in a book obviously, because it feels like it's coming to life in your head. I thought it was incredibly unrealistic in terms of how the modern day murder was handled. It was like this remote boarding school, but like the teachers like leading the investigation. They get the police in for like one day just to like basically collect the body, and then other than that it's just like communicating with the kids and like questioning the kids by themselves and things like that. And, you know, that was just like one element of it, but I just felt like that was not representative of what would actually happen in that case. And like maybe that doesn't matter so much because this is a YA book and it's for like kids, you know. There could have been like a little bit more nuance to that part of it. I also think that Stevie's character, she was really curious, she was interested in solving this case. I don't know how she got into the school basically. Like I know she like said she was very passionate about true crime. The way that she went into exploring the past case as well as the present one felt like a nosy, curious kid, you know? It didn't feel like she's really popping off. The cliffhanger ending thoroughly irritated me. If you didn't know this already, I feel like this is incredibly important to point out. This book is the first in a trilogy. The murders in the past, and I think the one in the present as well, are only solved at the end of book 3. It's the one mystery plot line throughout the 3 books, so we basically don't get any conclusions whatsoever at the end of book 1 or at the end of book 2. You have to wait till book 3 in order to see that. I'm really glad I went into this book knowing that, because I think I would have been like incredibly disappointed. The way this book ended off was on such like a random note that I was just like, what did I even go through this for? It kind of annoys me even more so the fact that this is a trilogy. Like if this was duology, I'd be like, okay, I just need to read like one more book and then I'm gonna know what happens. But the fact I've got like an entire like 400-page book ahead of me, we're gonna be finding out a little bit more, but like nothing is gonna be concluded within that. It feels like Maureen Johnson went to the publisher and was like, this is my idea, and the publisher was like, okay, that's great, but like could you drag that across 3 books to make us more money? That's what it feels like. And I feel like that was just like so rubbish, you know? Because like you read these books, yes, for like the cliffhangers and the mystery element, but you also read them for that mystery to then get solved. And I feel like that was just not true of this book. Well, it wasn't true of it. So this was a 4 stars, and then the cliffhanger alongside just some other like random points, jotted down to 3.5. But yeah, still a really, really good book. I don't know, like I do want to read on, I think. Maybe I'll audiobook books 2 and 3, or maybe just like get them on Kindle or something, because I don't really fancy, I mean, I don't want hardcover. I don't really like hardcovers anyways. But I also don't want to be buying paperbacks of the next books in case I don't like them. So I feel like I'm gonna probably continue on with the series, and if I get to the end of it and I love it, then I'll repurchase the entire series in paperback. I could just Google like what happens. I'm not massively invested in the story. I do kind of wonder, but I'm not like desperate to find out. So there you have it. Those are the 4 books that I have to mention in today's video. 1 book from August that I didn't get to, and then 3 from September. Hoping that October will be a better reading month. I'm reading a lot of thickies. If you've seen my CPR video, you'd already know this. So therefore those are probably going to take me a little bit to get through. But I do hope to read hopefully more than September, but also to enjoy the books I'm reading more so than September. All good ratings, like 3.5 and 4, but not really gripping me. I feel like that's the main thing. But yeah, these were all the books in today's video. Thank you so much for watching. Give it a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and I'll see you very, very soon in a few days for another video. Bye bye.